Hey, this is Jane Langen, and this is my presentation on the lesson plan I created. First of all, I want to give a great shout out to Dr. Diaz, who helped me work through this. I was kind of deciding what it was I wanted to do, and the idea of revamping an old lesson using technology, it made a huge difference. And I did this right before the Thanksgiving break. Also made a great difference to do something like this right before the break where students are kind of checked out from the literature in general. So this was perfect. So what I did was this lesson has to do with creating a resume, and the essential questions have to do with why is a resume important, what types of information should you include and not include, how should you format it. The objectives, basically, I wanted them to be able to describe the elements of a resume, to apply their understanding of standards of writing, because I do teach a language arts class and writing is critical to it. But this kind of real world writing is also really, really helpful for them. It's definitely makes it authentic. So they describe the elements, they apply their understanding, they use technology. This is also one of the standards. They evaluate peers and provide feedback, and then they create and finalize their own resume. And I think the feedback I got on this was wonderful from the students. Again, these are the standards, of course, the ISTE standards, but the Georgia standards for 11-12 ELA have to do with producing writing that is appropriate for their task, their purpose, their audience. So this really hits on that. Develop and strengthen it by planning, revising, and editing. So we hit all aspects of that. Using technology to produce, publish, and update individual or shared writing. That was wonderful in this lesson. And then, of course, conventions of standard English. So that's just sort of part of my job. And what I did was I housed the lesson in Nearpod, and I'll go through it in just a second. But basically, I engaged by using a clip, and I like Nearpod for that because you can get them involved by having them answer questions in the midst of a clip. And so, as we were going through it as a class, I was able to let them, stop and respond, but also I had a version where I could send it home with students who weren't there that day, and they were able to catch up by using the student directed version. Then we used Blookit. If you're not familiar with Blookit, it's a lot of fun, even for high school seniors. They really enjoyed it. And then I had them collaborating, and we know that collaboration is an excellent strategy for learning and definitely was very useful for them in learning about resume writing. They worked then in groups to research about resume writing. They created either using a resume worksheet or a resume generator according to their interests. And then they also reviewed each other's. And that was incredibly helpful to me as a teacher to have them looking at it. They're looking at their own writing, according to a rubric, and then peer reviewing others. So to have that all come before it comes to me is wonderful. And so here is the Nearpod that I use to house it. And one of the things I like about Nearpod is that as far as, adaptive or assistive technologies, it has its own screen readers in here, and so I could have a lot of this read to them. And as I mentioned, I include a clip. Sorry, let me back that up. But I included a clip from Legally Blonde where a professor asks her for a resume. And I asked them, do you think she has one with her? And then it goes on. She fishes one out, and I asked the students what they think about it. Sorry, this is where I just typed in earlier. But basically, I said, what do you think about a resume that's pink and scented? And got some interesting responses. In general, students said, yeah, that's ridiculous. But then some were like, that's awesome. And we had a nice little discussion revolving around that. And then I had a little quiz basically asking them, and again, I've already put in the answers here, but I asked them what the purpose of a resume was, and this, I really got some different responses on this one. So a good number said that it's meant to land you the job, and others said, maybe they didn't read past the first one, but a resume shows you're interested in a job. And so we had a good discussion about this is actually the purpose of a cover letter. And we talked about that and how we could do an activity with that next semester or even before final exams this semester if we had time. And then I included a poll just to see how many students did have their own resume. It was actually kind of half and half because a lot of the students I work with, we work with them on getting internships, and so we've done some of this with some students they knew, and I'm going to skip this part, but it was, they had fun with that. And then they brainstormed ideas, and again I just stuck this up here to demonstrate the tool, but basically I had them brainstorming ideas about what they thought should be included in a resume and had them put that up all up there simultaneously and then respond to each other's. Then I had them working in groups of 3, and this, I actually have a computer lab as my classroom, and so this worked out really well. So I put them in groups of 3, or had them in groups of 3, and they got to choose who was student 1, 2, or 3. And they were learning about resumes, and I gave them options of this link is a text link where they can just read about it, but then I also gave them links to videos and things that they could look at. And then they had to find an additional source of their own. So then they reported out to their small group and then out to the larger group. So it's definitely useful learning opportunity. After we had done that and they were ready to start working on it, I gave them some action words that are useful. And then I gave them a handout, a resume writing worksheet. So depending on their learning style preferences, some kids are still paper and pencil type kids, and so I gave them this as something they could use if they wanted to, but also they had the opportunity to use this resume generator by Read Write Think, and so more students tended to use the tool than anything, but I did have some who preferred the handout. And then they used the app Formative once they had created their resume. They used Formative and were able to do peer evaluations of each other's resumes. And all of that was really successful the week before Thanksgiving. I got some great examples of resumes. Definitely was self-differentiating based on their own interests and plans after high school. Let's see, I guess as far as troubleshooting and tech issues, the one thing, it didn't happen, luckily, it actually happened after the fact. I had set the Nearpod and set all the different activities and things to end yesterday, and so at like 2:10, and so I did have students who were absent who got in touch with me right after and were saying, I can't access this, I can't do this, it says it's closed. And so as far as troubleshooting, the tech issues I had were after the fact with students who were absent, but definitely nothing too terrible and something I could easily amend. So hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.